Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends and countrymen, welcome back to TrailBlazerz Radio. You guys are tuned in to TrailBlazerz, and I am your host, Mr. Frederick Beaty. Thank you guys so much for tuning in with us tonight. We have a very, very special guest in the building with us tonight, and we're going to have a great conversation with you with her tonight. But before we jump into that, I want to just throw a couple of things out here really quickly before we get into the crux of the conversation. So I want you guys to continue to follow us on Facebook at TrailBlazerz Radio. Follow us on Instagram at TrailBlazerz Radio. Also follow us on LinkedIn at TrailBlazerz Radio. And also please follow us and subscribe to our YouTube channel at TrailBlazerz Radio. Also, if you guys prefer to listen to a streaming podcast, an audio podcast as opposed to a video podcast, we do upload our episodes to Anchor. So those episodes are also played up on Spotify, Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, anywhere you get your audio podcast, you guys can tune into us, and we will make sure that the latest episode is always up and available and ready for you guys to listen to or to view on our channel. We want to first and foremost, we want to thank all our listeners and all our viewers for tuning into us tonight. You guys could have been anywhere else, but you guys are right here. Make sure you continue to like, share, and follow us. And also on this particular episode, make sure you guys comment if you guys have questions for me or even for my beautiful guest here. So with that being said, the person that is arrayed to my right or to your left, however you're viewing her, doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to give her the best one that I possibly can try to give. She is an author. She is a counselor. She is a philanthropist. She is a lot of things. But the one thing that stands out for me is the name that she gave herself, the Hope Dealer. And we're gonna most definitely talk about a lot of those things here in a few moments. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce to you author, philanthropist, counselor, speaker, my sister, Miss Sandra Gamble. How are you? How are you, Sid? How are you, my sister? How are you?
I am well, super excited to be here. Excited about what the year 2022 is going to bring, the year double. So I'm excited to be here tonight, and thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, I am. Thank you for, for just coming and blessing us with your presence. I am totally excited to have you here in the building with us, Sandra, and I am looking forward to our conversation. This is going to be a good one because I've seen a couple of your Facebook lives, and you talk a lot about mental health. So, and I most definitely want to jump into that. But I want to know, the thing that I really want to know is, how did the name the Hope Dealer come about?
I don't know. It actually just kind of birthed itself. My clients will always tell me, Miss Gamble, you always have hope. You know, no matter how dark the situation is, you always have the ability to make us see a little bit differently. And so one day I came across this acronym, having only positive expectations, and I said, you know what? I'm the hope dealer. Yeah, I said
Mm,
some people sell dope, but I deal hope. Yeah.
that's what's up. I love that. I love that. And that came from did that come from your experiences as a counselor?
I've always been an optimistic person. I don't know why. I would always look at the bright side of things. And
Mm,
but certainly, when you become a counselor, when I became a counselor, and you have to advocate for the client, and you have to see the client, because when I see the client, some of them are at their worst. So you have
mm.
to find a way to try to instill in them or encourage them, to remind them there's still purpose to keep going. So you become a hope dealer in that moment.
Wow, and I love that because usually as a counselor, and even with the counselor that I see, these people see us at our worst, and excuse me, and they take in a lot of the things that we put out there. How, as a counselor, how easy or how difficult is that to take in aggression, anger, despondency, depression, and how hard, how difficult it is to take in all that and then to kind of expel that as you move from one, I won't say move from one client to the next, but as you kind of deal with your own things personally.
I think for me, what has worked is compartmentalizing, understanding that I don't have all the answers. That really the answers are within the client. And my goal as a clinician is to help them discover their own answers, to empower them. But certainly self-care is so important. And for me, so I am intentional about taking walks,
Mm,
in nature. I'm intentional about listening to music that will help kind of soothe my mind. I'm intentional about prayer, and I also understand that I can't fix people. That people have to
mm,
have the ability within themselves to want better, and do the work. I'm just there to facilitate the change.
that's it. That's it. And like you said, compartmentalization is important, and as a counselor. Um, but even on as someone who deals with mental health conditions such as me, you know, I I have to ask this question because for me it's kind of like that important thing for
Right.
someone like me, and this could be applicable to anyone who's suffering through mental health conditions or maybe going through a tough time right now. How important is it to compartmentalize things? How important is it to see things, see the bigger picture in things?
Well, I think is very important. It's essential because everything right now, and I'm going to just talk about in general with this pandemic, has placed us all in a trauma like state, right?
Hmm.
If you will, worldwide, globally, we're doing this thing that none of us have ever seen before at the same time, and so it can become overwhelming easily. But I often try to stay in the moment, stay in the day, um, mindfulness, and focusing on the positive things in that day and the things that I can control. There's so many things we can't control, but there's a few things that we can control. And so you look for the few things that you can control and you do that.
So control what you can control, and then anything that you can't control, you just kind of just you pray about it or you meditate on it.
Yes, absolutely.
That is, and I've heard that phrase. I've heard that phrase on several occasions before. Control what you can control, and I always thought that it was like, well, I always thought about it from the perspective of like, okay, well, I'm in control of pretty much everything, but come to find out that we're not, because we can control our thought processes, we can control our decisions, but we can't control the decisions and thought processes of other people.
Right. And we certainly can't control um, the fact that we're all going through a pandemic globally. I think
Mhm.
this pandemic has shown us how minute we are.
Yes. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And it's crazy just to kind of just see all this go happen. But but even in the same instance, while we're going through a global pandemic, there's still things that are ever present. We're still dealing with, you know, police brutality. We're still dealing with racism. We're still dealing with, you know, all the other things that permeate from just being human beings.
Right.
And I know for a lot of people that's been difficult. That's been a difficult pill to swallow. What's the best advice that you could give to someone who, you know, in the midst of this global pandemic is going through a lot of things, maybe feeling some sort of way emotionally, or maybe just feeling or just thinking some sort of way mentally, and like they feel like everything is out of control and they feel like everything is just lost.
Oh, the first thing I would like to say is that it's absolutely okay to not be okay. I think
Mm,
for some reason or another, um, when we deal with mental health and society, there's such a stigma with it. But but none of us are what we need to be. We all are work in progress, and we don't get to choose our cross, right? We just get to
right.
carry it. We just get to carry it. So it's first of all, it's okay to not be okay. Secondly, find you that safe space to unload, that non-biased, non-judgmental space where you can just be. And thirdly, just focus on what is going right. The fact that I'm still here, the fact that I'm still alive and I'm breathing tells me that I still have purpose and that I still have value and there's work to be done.
Mm, Acknowledging that you're not okay, find a safe space to unload, and if I love those things because it's so hard to kind of, for one of the things that I think, and I do want to ask you this, you know, with, and I think that this is probably a loaded question, but because you're a counselor, you may have, and your perspective on it may be a lot different than other people that I've asked.
Okay.
Why is it so difficult for us as black and brown people to admit that we're having a crisis or something like that? Why is it so difficult for us to admit those things?
I'm so happy you asked that question. I had a conversation with my pastor when I first released my first book, and he talked about how he was so surprised that that happened in the African American community. You know
He's
that he thought
surprised.
that, yeah, yeah, and was a middle class Caucasian instance. And I said to him, how far removed are you from reality, Pastor? I said, the reason why we can't get deliverance is because people aren't transparent. So, um,
Mm,
transparency is what transforms. But even
mm,
the church does not give us a space to be transparent. It teaches us how to hoop and holler, praise God, and all of that's good. And yeah, we love God, but at the same time, when you are battling in your mind, you need some real solutions right there. And I often say that sometimes healing and deliverance comes in the form of a pill. We need a counselor in a couch because
mhm.
God chooses to heal in many different ways, right? So, I might get delivered instantly, but I might have to take a pill so my thought process can function the way it needs to function. And all of it is okay.
Right. But but I think the one drawback of it, and this is something that I kind of, while you were answering the question, is something I thought about. But why is it so hard for churches to acknowledge that? Why is it so hard for them to see that in people? And why is it so hard for them to acknowledge that and then see that in people? Because the way I look at it, and this is just the way that I look at it from the perspective that I have, you go to church to, you know, to me, church is like a hospital. You go in a hospital to be healed of some ailment or some condition that you have. You're not supposed to walk out, and you're not supposed to walk out having a different condition or the same condition that you walked in with. So why is it so difficult for churches to kind of look at that and acknowledge that and acknowledge those things? Because usually, and this is not for all churches and not for all ministers and all leaders. So anyone that's a leader or a spiritual leader or who has a church and things of that nature, I want to make this explicitly plain that I'm not saying this to what the question I'm asking is not to downgrade or pick at any religious organization or anything like that. It's just something that I see that I feel is so common. So why is that so difficult for churches to acknowledge that and help when people go through those situations?
I really think because the fact that they still see mental illness as a moral failure.
Mm,
They're not identifying mental illness the same way they identify hypertension and diabetes and heart disease.
mm,
Um, because it's the broken brain that they can't see. And oftentimes, what we don't understand, we run away from. So instead of educating and empowering themselves and equipping themselves with what needs to take place for the total man or woman to become whole, because we're mind, body, and spirit, they tend
that's
to
right.
kind of skip over that and go on
Mm,
to the comfortable thing.
wow. So that's an interesting answer though, because you know I've seen some leaders talk about it, and again, this is not to bash. I'm not bashing any leader or anything of that nature, but I've seen leaders talk about it, and I've seen them gloss over it, but never really take it on and tackle it at at the source or whatever. They'll always say, "Hey, well, this person is well, let's talk about this and talk about these conditions," but never come at it at a different angle. And like you said, it's really is a moral failure because they look at it as moral failure. And again, we're mind, body, and spirit. And yes, Terrence, one of Terrence Jackson said they put it in the basket of unfaithfulness. And I strongly believe that. Great comment, Terrence. I strongly believe that because when they see, okay, I'm having a mental breakdown, I'm suffering from PTSD, or I have depression, they look at it as you're depressed because you're not faithful enough to God or whatnot. I'm dude, I just lost a family member, or I just lost my job, or I'm just going through a hard time. It's not that I'm not faithful, it's just I'm going through a hard time.
Right, right.
But also the one thing that Terrence just said, also brought another thought process. And it's a very unfair assessment of how they look at it. They look at it as unfaithfulness, but all in reality is just the act of us being human and us going through things. And it's
Absolutely.
difficult. And it's difficult for I guess it's difficult for some leaders to wrap their head around that because it's like, well, he's going through whatever, but and the first thing they always ask is, where's your faith? My faith is still here. I'm still going
Hmm.
through this hard time.
That's right. That's it. My faith does not exempt me from life's issues.
Ooh, say that again. Say that one more time, because I don't think the people in the back heard that.
Yeah, my faith does not exempt me from life issues.
Mm. Now, now that you repeated that for me, let's put that in context because I really want people to understand what that means. So put that in context for us.
Just because I have a belief in God does not mean I'm not going to come under attack. It does not mean that hard times will not happen. It does not mean that I won't lose anything. It simply says I trust and believe that with God's help, I can get through these things, but it does not exempt me.
Mm. See, that's what's up. I love that. And Terrence agrees with us. And I'm just gonna throw that up there. So faith does not exempt us from life issues. And that's something that we all have to kind of just believe in, just kind of believe in, because the simple fact of the matter is if we just feel that we're exempt from whatever goes down as far as life is concerned, then the way I look at it, if we feel like we're exempt, then we won't experience anything. We don't walk away with experiences. We don't walk away with learning. We don't walk away with understanding or lessons learned. And that's the and I think that for me that's the ultimate. I think that's the main part of us being human, is to learn, to evolve, to be able to see things from a different perspective, for see things from different perspectives other than our own perspectives. And I think, and again, it's just, I mean, I don't want to outright say that it's ignorance on the church's part, but for me, in a lopsided way, it is.
And I'm going to agree with that. I'm going to absolutely agree with that. But again, education is the key. That's the key component, because we do run away from what we don't understand. It's human nature. But now that
Mm,
you recognize that there's a need, then you need the leaders. They need to become educated about mental health and the importance of mental wellness, and not only for their congregation, but for themselves as well, because pastors are not exempt either. You know,
mm-mm.
and they've been taught, you lead while you bleed, and that's not beneficial to anything, because the body is only as good as the head, and when the head is out of order, then the body is out of order as well.
Woo, man, look, that 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 right there is worth more than anything. And it's so and it's so important for leaders to understand that, hey, even you are susceptible to this. Even you are susceptible to things such as depression and grief and everything, all the other things that go with dealing with traumatic situations, or even situations that aren't traumatic but are emotionally jarring. So you're not there. And I think, and this is again, some leaders, not all, some leaders think that they're that above that particular approach. Well, I'm good. I'm okay. I got faith. I got faith. God will get me through this depression, and that's for me. That's all. That's all well and good. But even you as a church leader need to have somebody to talk to. You got to have somebody that you can. You got to have that person that you can unload. I won't say unload on, but you also have to have that safe space. And it kind of segues into what I was going to ask you. The how what is it? How important is it to have a safe space when you're, especially when someone is going through so much? You know, again, we're dealing with a global pandemic. Not to mention, there's so many other things that are compiled on top of that. How important is it to have those safe spaces?
It's essential to have those safe places. It's a matter of life and death, literally.
Wow. Wow. Expound on that.
A clinician is a person that is non-biased, non-judgmental, and doesn't have ties to you as far as family. So we're able to look at situations from all sides and not be um, biased about anything, because we're not your family. See, your family can't tell you what you need to hear, because of fear of you falling out, or you
Mm,
know falling out of love, or there's some type of a grudge being held. We don't have that. And so when you come and you unload and unpack, and we unpack your things, I
mm,
have the ability, because I'm non-judgmental, I'm non-biased, and I'm not closer to you that way, to say, listen, Freddie, you're not looking at that from the right perspective, and perhaps what if it's actually this. So
mm.
so that's the importance of having the neutral person that you can unload with, and
Right.
understand that there's no hidden agenda.
Yeah, because a lot of people would look at it from that particular viewpoint, and I've seen them, even myself. When you confide in certain people in the utmost of confidence, and they take advantage of that confidence, and they tell other people, and that wasn't your intent, because you assume that they were saved to you, because, and me personally, because I assumed that they were a safe haven or a safe space for me to go to. And I was like, well, I'm gonna be a little bit more selective about the people who I consider safe spaces now, because and it was ignorance on my part. You know, I should have saw the signs. I should have saw the signs that they were not necessarily a safe space for me to go to, but I ignored the signs and still went to that person, assuming that they possibly could be a safe space, and it bit me, and I was like, yeah, we're not doing that no more, ever
Lesson
again.
learned.
Oh yeah,
Lesson learned. That's it.
most definitely now, because for me, and I know people have different ways of dealing with certain things, you know, and then some people just don't deal with them. They kind of just curl up into this ball, and they don't want and they become antisocial, and they don't want to interact with people, and then they don't want to interact with themselves, and then they don't want to deal with what's going on. What is the detriment to not finding a safe space, to not unloading? I mean, I know it's the one of the I know one of the answers is probably the more obvious one, but I'm pretty sure there are answers that are not so obvious. So, what's the detriment of not finding a safe space and not unloading?
It can literally be the matter of life and death, because a person that is going through a crisis, uh, just say depression. First of all, you have a lot of negative thinking and a lot of negative thought process, and so if you don't have anybody to point that out to you, your your feelings are going to minister to you. And I tell people all the time that feelings are valid, but they're not always truthful. But when you are depressed, you don't have the ability or the capacity to see that your feelings are deceiving you. And that's
Mm,
why you need that safe space.
that non-judgmental place where you can be who you are, and no one was gonna be like, well, hey, you're just nah, you can't, you going through that. Nah, we can't help you. And I know for me, and this is just for me to be transparent with a lot, because I have no problem with being transparent about the things that I go through. Um, I suffer from depression and PTSD and anxiety. For me, having those safe spaces is so vitally important, because it allows me to kind of just be in a protective bubble where I can, let all that stuff go. And then when I walk out of that protective bubble, I'm better for it, and not any worse for wear. Unfortunately, some people, some of us, not all of us, we tend to walk into safe spaces thinking that it's with the misconception that it's not necessarily a safe space. This is just kind of like, I'm just going through the motions with this. And that was me for a while, for a long time. Or I'm just gonna go see this person just to talk to them. They're not, I know they're not necessarily gonna help me, but they're gonna sit there, they're gonna, tap on a notebook with a pen and just write some things down and really just not say anything to me. And then, say maybe one or two good things, and then send me on my way. So, and you've been how long have you been how long and I forgot to even ask you this. How long have you been a counselor?
10 plus years as an adult service counselor.
Wow.
Yeah,
So I know this is probably an obvious question. So you pretty much seen a lot.
I have.
My
I
goodness.
have. I've seen a great deal. Um,
Wow. So you've seen victories and you've seen losses.
Absolutely.
Now, and I've always wanted to ask anyone who was a counselor this. How how hard are those losses for you as a counselor to take in? when you, and what I mean by that is that when you tried your very best to help this person to try to get over the hump, and it doesn't, it, for some unforeseen reason or another, it doesn't work, and that person either does something to severely hurt themselves and they survive, or they try to do something to severely hurt themselves and they don't survive, or they may go to something like maybe drug abuse, or they just end up flaming out. So how difficult is it to deal with those types of things?
It's very challenging because remember, we are engrossed in these people's lives. I've had people on my caseload for the 10 years I've been there, and so you develop a rapport and relationship with these clients, and in a strange kind of way, it's almost like you're part of their family because you know the dynamics in the family, and
Mm,
it can be very challenging. I remember in particular when I have had my first client to die by a suicide accidental death.
mm.
She was self-medicating but denying her drug use, and then found
Oh,
out later that she OD'd off of some crack cocaine and died in the bathtub, and her husband found her. Um, I was devastated because that was my first experience with losing a client. But I had to go back and remind myself, first of all, I'm not God. You
right.
know, when I ask myself, did you do the best that you could with what you knew? My answer was yes.
There
And
you
that's
go.
all that's required. I can't live life for people, and I can't control their environment and who they
Mhm.
choose for friends or their maladaptive behavior. I can give them the tools, but if they don't unpack that toolbox and implement those tools, they're useless.
Yeah. It's just something. It's just something that's sitting on your hip or just sitting on the counter waiting to be opened.
Right?
That's
The greatest carpenter can't build if he don't take out his tools and utilize them.
mhm. And yeah, and I think, and the one thing that my counselor has told me a couple of times, the greatest tool in your toolbox is your perspective, how you how you see things, the way that you see things. And when I asked her that, I kind of asked her that, can you expound on that a little bit? And she said, and she told me in the most succinct way possible. She said, how you view things, how you look at things, from the way that you see things is the best toolbox you can have. Whether you look at things from a negative or positive perspective, or even an indifferent perspective, it has an effect on your mental and your emotional health. So if you look at something from a negative perspective, you're going to have a negative outcome. So if you look at it from a positive perspective, you have a positive outcome. And if it's indifferent, well, you're just not going to make a choice on it. You're not going to make a choice on it until you either get more neg more po- more either more negative information or more positive information. And I was like, really? It's And I'm looking at her like, it's that simple.
It's that simple. The universe has no better um thing is to greet us the way we expect.
Good point.
Yeah, if we expect good, then guess what? Most of the time, good things happen. Expectation is the breeding ground for miracles. And if we expect negative to happen, then it shows up with that too.
Oh man, I love that. I love that little nugget right there. Expectation is the breeding ground for miracles. So and it largely depends on whether you're having a negative or a positive expectation. If you're looking for a miracle, then you're gonna have to have positive expectations. Because if not, it'll come to the opposite. It'll be bad. It'll be a bad. Exactly, Terrence. What we focus on.
That's
Exactly.
right. And
And
I will say this, think about it. It's impossible to have positive thinking going on and feel depressed. It's impossible.
mm, that's a good question. Never thought
Yeah.
about it like that.
Yeah. Just as it's impossible to have negative thought process and feel positive. They don't go together. So I tell people, when you start to feel depressed, examine your thought process.
There you go. Because it might be something that's negative that's impacting it. And I think Terrence did have a question. So he said, Miss Gamble, you mentioned in a small part of our conversation with your pastor. Since that time, have you seen any changes in their view on the subject of mental illness? And if so, could you provide a few examples?
Okay, well, there's no implementation at church right now. There's nothing different as far as programming. But he did acknowledge to me that he actually had a counselor at the VA.
Mm,
So there's been some acceptance and some acknowledgement.
wow. But really not implementation, really.
Right.
But I guess my question is, if we can implement it from the aspect of, like, and I look at this from both sides of the coin. If we can implement it from the aspect of, like, our employers. So, every employer that I know has some sort of program that's around. So, like, and I forgot the name of the program. I forgot the name of the programs that most employers have, but it's something that allows
EAP.
you, what is it called?
EAP.
Yeah, there we go. EAP. So
Uh-huh.
it gives you those free visits to talk to somebody, and then if you want to continue with that person, then it's if you have insurance, then you pay for it at the plan level. So with the implementation of that, you know, I think when I saw something like that, and when I personally utilize it, it put me into the aspect of, okay, employers are seeing the impact of this, and they're taking steps. Some employers are taking aggressive steps to make sure that the health and well-being of their employees is top priority. So, because when I look at that on that positive aspect, now I look at it from the other side, which is now the church side. I mean, if they're seeing the positive aspect of it from the employment side, what is the difficulty in not being able to utilize those same aspects of it, or at least maybe adapting something that operates along the same lines, or at least something that's as similar.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So
I
it's
just think it's going to take what we're doing now, continue educating, um, continuing to have these hard conversations, the big pink elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about. For me to continue saying, hey, there's a pink elephant in the room, whether you want to see it or not, because reality
mm,
is what it is, not what we want it to be. And we
that's
can't
right.
help people until we deal with all of it.
That's right. And for a lot of leaders, that means that means pulling the rug out and seeing the floor for what it is.
That's
I
right.
don't and I don't think a lot of leaders want to pull that off and see what it is. But it you have to take off that bandage, and you have to see the wound for what it is, and you have to I I compare mental illness to a wound. If you properly take care of it, properly, triage it. If you properly triage it, number one, and then you properly take care of it, then the wound heals and there's a scar. But if it's properly taken care of, the scar is minimal. But if you don't take care of it, it gets infected, it gets worse, and then it just gets to a point to where it's really unbearable. And then there are other things that could possibly happen. With a wound that's not taken care of, and especially if it gets infected and really bad, that could lead up to amputation. And I compare that to the same thing as far as how certain churches approach that. And I'm like, that could really lead up to a spiritual amputation, because that person will get to the point to where they're so tired of exposing themselves and then always getting hurt, and then they allow that wound to fester and everything like that. That I really look at that as like a spiritual amputation, because once that happens, some people will literally amputate themselves and separate themselves from, from God. Not because, and it's not because they don't love God or anything like that, but it's because of what they just experienced.
Yeah, the basic need for every human being is to be loved and understood. That's our basic need. Love,
Mhm.
accepted, and understood. And when we don't feel as if we got those things, then we tend to isolate or separate ourselves.
Yep. And then people look at it as like, well, they didn't want to be around the church. No, his I confided in you. You didn't say anything, or you didn't help me. So I'm I'm over here. I'm over here. I'm over here and out the way because I don't want to deal with it. And I think that's the word. I think that's the worst thing we as human beings can do is when we don't confront what we need to confront. The one thing that I always say to people, the one thing that I've always said, and I posted it maybe once or twice in a Facebook post, is that you can't conquer what you can't confront.
Right.
And if you don't confront it, how you gonna conquer it? And even for me, as I'm going through what I'm going through, and better understanding, you know, the conditions that I have. Now, number one, by reading about them and researching them and understanding what I can do to be better, as far as like mitigating things, as far as stuff that triggers me, especially the PTSD and the anxiety and also the depression. So I try to avoid the things that trigger me. And I'm a writer and I'm a reader too. I'm always looking at Google, or I'm always reading about something or watching something on like on YouTube or something like that when it deals with those things, because the more information that I have available to me, the better excuse me, the better equipped that I am to deal with it. That, and then also in conjunction with talking with my counselor and following her steps, following the things that the advice that she gives me, and just understanding that these things are not, understanding that a lot of these what happens and what I'm going through is not necessarily my fault, but I also have to take responsibility and to dealing with it. And man,
Yeah,
it's for me, it's been an eye opener,
right.
because it really has me looking into me, looking deeper into myself than I ever would have did before, had I not spoken to anyone.
Right. And you got to remember, I think we forget this, is that every experience that we go through and come out of is an opportunity to help somebody else.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
You can't have a testimony without a test.
Mm.
We want the testimony, but we don't want the test.
Exactly. You don't got a message if you don't go through the mess.
Right.
That's I mean, and I love that. I love how you put that, and because that's a perspective I think a lot of us should have, because each one of us has some testimony or some message that we could give to somebody, and it may not reach a lot of people, it may not reach a million people, but if it reaches one person, then I always say, if I can reach one person through the conversations I have with, not only with you but with other people, if we can reach one person, then it's a mission accomplished. You know,
Absolutely.
and the one thing I don't like, I hate as well, it's not about just that one person. And well, not everybody's gonna subscribe to your message. So you can't so I guess, and that's the one thing I want to ask you, because you do these Facebook lives, and you also talk about it a lot when you post, you know, how important is it for you to commit to make sure that your message remains consistent with, you know, within, well, I'm gonna say how relevant, how important is it for you to make sure that your message also, number one, remains consistent, but number two, remains relevant?
It's my credibility. Um, it's my brand. It's my integrity. Because if I'm not consistent, because champions do the work, and if I don't do the work, then I won't get the results. And
Exactly.
sometimes we're not going to see the results because we change people's lives that we never meet. So I never look for the number. I just show up as my authentic self.
Yes, indeed. A lot of people look for the number, and the funny part about it is a lot of advocates look for the numbers. Well, and then they brag about, well, I helped this many people. Okay, congratulations. What's next for you? What's next though? And I think when people look at the numbers, it's they get awestruck, like, oh, you helped this many people. Okay. And see, for me, I'm not impressed by stuff like that. I'm like, oh, so you helped
Mhm.
that many people? Okay, what's next? And then I give them that look like, what's next? What's next for you? You help this many people. Now that you help that many people, help more people, increase your number, or better yet, increase your reach. But when people are so fixated on numbers and recognition, it becomes like, becomes fabricated. It becomes, insincere. And if it's one pet peeve I hate, if it's one pet peeve that I have in my entire life, is insincerity. Insincerity. And when I notice you're not sincere, I'm like, I go straight to the left. I'm like, nah, I can't deal with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're not being authentic at this point. And you mentioned something. How important is it to be your authentic self when you talk to people, especially at the level or the point that they are in their lives?
People say transformation. The only thing that brings about transformation is transparency.
Mm,
People are looking for the real you to show up and say, this is my truth. Yes, I live with trauma. Yes, my dad had bipolar, manic depressive disorder with psychotic features. Yes, I was verbally, physically, and emotionally abused by my father, but that's not my story anymore. I
mm,
was a victim, but now I am victorious. I was pitiful, but now I am powerful. This is my truth.
mm.
And if
Man.
I can make it through, you can also.
Mm, 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 mm. I love the fact that you said transparency brings about transformation. Because at any given point in time, I think, and I'll say this because it's true of me, but also when I look at us as a people, we're either we're not transparent, we're not transparent enough. And when I say that, I mean we're not transparent to the point to where we completely let our guard down and we allow the people that we want to help, that we're looking to help us. And when we don't give them that transparency, it hinders or it handicaps their ability to help us. So I look at that as, and like I said, me included, because I'm not exempt, but we as a people, we're not transparent enough. And how do we break that? How do we break that particular stigma? How do we come out of that come out of that mentality that is, how can I put this? How do we how do we come out of that mentality that that we embrace trauma more than healing? How do we come out of the how do we as a people come out of that mentality? I know that's a loaded question, but I'm really curious about the way how you would approach that.
Well, I think we need to understand that we're all flawed. That's the part, perfection or perfect should have never been introduced. There's no such word. But
Mm-hmm.
flawed, we're all flawed, but our flaws doesn't make us fail. That hard things are not put in our way to stop us, but to call out our strength and courage. And if we
Mm-hmm.
walk through this thing and we get on the other side of this thing, then our thing can be a survival guide for somebody else. We need to stop being so self-absorbed because it's not about us, it's bigger than us.
Mm.
This book, when God was dealing with me about this book, he said to me, I dare the fact that you hide that I healed you in your emotions. He said, you got my healing and then you're going to hide. He said, it's not even about you. It's about all
Mm.
the other people that are waiting to come out of bondage over your story. You are
Mm.
just a vessel. It's not about you. It's about me.
Yes, indeed. Now, was it your like the things you went through? Was those the things that prompted you to write the book, write your books? I'm sorry.
Um, well, that book was about my experience, and again, removing the stigma from mental illness,
Mhm.
in the African American community, and just talking about how I took care of my dad for 12 years
Mm.
and how he didn't have the capacity to take care of me, but I took care of him, and the power in forgiveness and redemption. And how when I got on the other side of that thing, it was so much sweeter because I was able to take care of a person that couldn't take care of me.
Mm. Wow. That's and when you and now when did you start taking care of your father? Was you at like a very was that a young age, or was you kind of like over the age of 18 or
As soon as I walked out of college,
oh wow. So
yeah,
when you graduate from college, boom, here boom, you have to take care of your father.
here we go. He's in the hospital for depression. He's
Mm.
back in the hospital for depression. He's in the hospital for psychosis. He's in the hospital for he had so many different diagnoses before they finally diagnosed him with bipolar, manic depressive disorder with psychotic features. I took care of my dad for 12 years. My parents are
Mhm.
divorced. I'm an only child, and my dad had 32 hospitalization, either medically or mentally, in 12 years.
Wow. Good grief, good. Wow. That's I mean,
Yes.
but it also speaks to the strength of your strength and your perseverance and your endurance throughout that whole time because at any given time you could have folded. You could have been like, yeah, I'm giving up. We're not doing this. But
And
you
let's
still
be honest, there were days when I wanted to fold. I just want to clear that up.
okay,
Yeah.
got you, man. Because I mean, I don't know if I ever would have had the emotional fortitude to do something like that. But then again, you never know what you're capable of doing until you're tested.
That's it.
So what are the name of those two books that you wrote that you wrote?
Okay, the first book um is To Hell and Back: The Power of Forgiveness and Redemption. I had the title for 10 years before I ever wrote the book. God gave me the title. But I really truly think that I was still in the process of healing. I was not able to write the book. I think once I got on the other side of the healing, then I was able to write the book. And the book just talks about mental illness and removing the stigma from mental illness. It talks about bipolar, the highs and lows, and how I took care of father that didn't take care of me, and the power in forgiveness and redemption. And so
Mm,
that's what that book is about. And good grief is about grief. It's about how to effectively navigate through the 5 stages of grief, how to honor the legacy of your loved ones in a good way, understanding that death is not final, it's merely see you later. So it reframes
man.
your thinking and helps you to put it in more perspective that your loved one still lives through you.
Wow. You, wow. You know what? The funny, it's not coincidental that you mentioned that because again, to be transparent, I lost my son through a police involved shooting, and I still go through those stages of grief. But the one thing that, and this is just to be, extremely transparent, you know, I have I have a 5-year-old granddaughter, and she's the one that's having a very, very hard time processing all of this. And it's been since 2015 that, but she's aware of it. She's aware of the fact that her father's not around. And how do you how do you tell a 5-year-old how to process that? How do you, what could you tell a 5-year-old child what could you tell a 5-year-old child that could help her process that?
You can provide her with a reassurance that you're there for her. Um, and from 1 to 6 or 7, that's trust versus mistrust. Where they need to feel safe, they need to feel comfortable. You can show up and say, "Papa's here," you know, um, because she do not understand the gravity of the fact that her father is not here. She
Right.
don't she can't get that. But you can remind her that Papa is there for her. And anytime she needs to call Papa, or you can show up for her. She needs to know that she is secure.
You know what? And that's the and that and to think about it, that's what I told her when we were talking. And I told her that anytime she wanted to call me, you can. I'm available. And I also told her anything that you want to know about your father, I will make sure that I'll tell you everything that you and answer every question that you want to ask. But when I initially talked to her, it was heartbreaking to know that, this a 5-year-old is trying to process all this.
Right.
And
However,
she has no idea. You know, she has to me, she has no idea of how to pull all this in and kind of and process it. And that is what made me so sad. That's what made me sad.
right. And maybe instead of focusing on the fact that he's no longer here, you guys can start to focus on some of the things he enjoyed doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like write a thing, well, a letter, some type of legacy, that if he was a drawer, maybe you guys could start painting, or just to kind of incorporate some things instead of looking at a loss. Look at it from a different perspective, like, okay, we can allow him to live on through us.
Right. And I think that's the most important thing. And I'll make sure I pass that on to her and her mom because it's I know for me initially it was difficult, but I look the way I look at things now is, excuse me, there's a choice. We all make choices. Some choices are good, some choices are bad. Some choices empower us, other choices are detrimental to us, and then there are other choices that have fatal consequences. So I look at it from that perspective, and that puts me in a peaceful mode. But also understand the simple fact that you know even though he's not physically he's not even though his body's not physically here, I know that he's with the Father, and that is the one thing that brings me comfort. So anytime I feel sad, I know that I was like, okay, he's with the Father. He's with the Father, and he's no longer in pain or in any distress. So he's in a better place than where we are at the current moment. And that's what brings that that inner peace, and that washes over me. And I'm like, okay, now I can get through the rest of this day and not worry about and not have to. be so fixated on that. So it's, and I think everybody deals with that differently. So everyone's coping mechanisms are so different. Some people, remain in denial forever. And I think for me, that wasn't the place I wanted to be. Because to be in denial forever, how can I don't how do you exist in denial forever? I don't think that's possible, really.
It's unhealthy because
Very.
grieving is a process. And if you're going to successfully grieve, you can't skip any steps and you can't stay stuck in any steps. You have to go through the process: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. And they don't have to come in any order, but denial is normally first and acceptance is normally last, and the other three
Mhm.
can intertwine.
Right. So the other three can be in whatever order they come in.
Yes, you might be depressed one minute and angry the next.
Mm,
So yeah.
wow. Thanks for that. I appreciate that because I mean I know us as adults, we're a little bit more resilient when it comes to dealing with issues like that. With a child, they don't understand they don't understand. I won't say that she doesn't understand the concepts of life and death, but she understands the fact that her father's not here, and
Right,
that's the one thing. And that's what makes her sad.
right.
So I'll make sure I pass that information on to her because that's going to be something that's going to help her, you know, while she's going through this particular time, but also in the long run as she continues to kind of process everything out. And that kind of leads to one of my questions. What does not from just grief, but excuse me, what does that process look like for someone that not necessarily going through mental issues, but what does that process look like for someone that is working toward improving themselves from diagnosis to and from diagnosis forward? What does that quality of life look like for that person?
Hang on, I lost you for a second.
Okay, I'll repeat it. So from from like an initial diagnosis, like say for instance, and I'll use myself as an example. I'm PTSD, anxiety, depression. What is what would be the most important thing as far as quality of life for someone who's dealing with mental issues?
I'm not quite. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I don't know. It went out again.
Might be
Hold
it
on a
might be
second.
a lag, on one of our ends.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understand your question.
Okay. So I'll kind of I'll rephrase it.
Okay.
For someone who's dealing with mental health issues,
Hmm.
what does their quality of life look like?
Well, it depends on the person that's dealing with mental illness. It's the decision. It's the amount of work that you put in to your own mental health by
Mm,
educating and being informed and being empowered, asking the right questions, partnering with your counselor and your doctor, and trying new things. People with mental illness can lead a normal life if they are willing to do the work. You know,
mm,
unfortunately, my father never owned his mental illness. So it was a lot of hospitalizations, a lot of involuntary commitments had to be done. But you
mm.
how well you want to live your life.
Wow. Mm. And I, and I hear you clearly with that, and especially when you mentioned that your father didn't own his, and then it led to so many other things that were detrimental that could have been prevented. So
Right.
the one takeaway I'll take from that
It,
is it's
it's just
important
like
to own
hypertension.
what it is that you got and kind of deal with it.
Own it. Don't allow it to own you.
Woo, powerful. Yes, indeedy. Yes, indeedy. Powerful. Wow, I like that. So I was reading your bio. You also said that you speak and then you also do philanthropy. You also are a philanthropist. Then now, did the speaking come from where did the speaking come from what you do, what you currently do now, or or was it born out of something else?
Well, my aunt, rest her soul, my favorite Aunt Rosa was a poet. She wrote poetry, and every time somebody transitioned in our family, I was the one that had to be up there doing the poem. So I'm gonna
Mm.
say she must have saw something that I didn't see. I just kept saying to myself, why does she keep making me go up here and do these poems that I don't want to do?
She saw something that
Yeah.
she saw something didn't see.
And so, I've always had a passion about seeing people live a better quality of life. So I speak. I'm a lay leader at my church, so I speak in church, and this is just one more piece to it. One more piece. I've always wanted to inspire and motivate people.
There we go. That's it. And where does the philanthropy kick in? Where does the philanthropy fit in all this?
Um, I just have working with mental health, and then I worked in Department of Social Services. It was just a lot of young mothers, single mothers that just did not know how to navigate life, how to make good decisions in a partnership. And so I just started helping, anyway. I turned my office into a place where they could pretty much come and get anything, because I feel like, when we're blessed, we're truly blessed, not for ourselves, but to be a blessing to somebody else. I feel like I can't minister to you if you have an immediate need. You're not hearing that. You know, I'm hungry. I need some real tangible things. I need some food. And so maybe if I meet your need, maybe you can listen to what I have to say.
There you go. And I like that part of it because because basically it's the kind of the I look at it as like equivalent exchange. So if you're looking for something, you're gonna have to give up something in order to get something. That person says they're hungry. Well, okay, let me give you some food, and then maybe you'll, like you said, maybe that person will listen to what you have to say and take it in and use it. And you said your office was pretty much the place to go, either the place to hang out or the place to grab to get something. That's how did you manage that part? How did you manage that?
Well, I don't know. I just started bringing things in. I had a lot of females in my on my caseload, and they didn't have some of them didn't have toiletry, some of them were indigent, and I just started coming. I just started bringing clothes in at one point, having some in the file cabinet. Then I started bringing some food in, having in the file cabinet, water. I mean, I just started little. Just one day, I was like, these people need to be able to have some tangible things, you know,
Mm,
and I just started bringing stuff in.
wow.
Yeah.
And look at it now. Probably and the impact it has made, I'm pretty sure is more than tangible, more than just tangible.
Yeah. My pastor told me one day, he said, you really need to be a minister. And I said, sir, how far removed are you? I've been ministering for many years right from my office.
You don't got to do it. Ministry
Yeah.
ain't always labeled to the four walls, but because it can be anywhere that you are.
The definition of ministry is serving others. That's all it is.
That's it. The most
It
important,
didn't
and
say
that's
where you had to serve them at.
exactly. And the one thing that I think it goes back to the tenet of what Jesus said to the disciples: go branch out, go out, teach people, preach the gospel of the good news. It When I think about that, it really just goes back to what Jesus told his disciples, right before everything else happened.
Right.
Go out, teach everybody, reach people, help people, you know, give them that seed of hope. Be able to, meet them where they are, right? Meet them where they are at that time. And indeed, that I
Right.
anytime when you mention that, that's the first thing, that's the first thought that flooded in my mind. Like, I get, I see where she's coming from.
Yeah.
And that's what I relate to when I
Right.
look at that.
And there's also a scripture that says, "What you've made happen for the least of them, you made happen unto me." And he talked about how you fed them, and then the disciples said, "When did I do that?" And talk about how when you gave them, when they were thirsty, you gave them something to drink. And they said, "How did I do that?" And so Jesus was telling them, when you do the things, because you're my hands and feet, and when you
Exactly.
do that thing, then you're doing it unto me. Yeah.
Exactly. So powerful with that. Now, a couple more questions before we conclude here. Now, the one question that I want to ask, and this, I feel this is so important, because now, you being a counselor, you're still active in what you do, and you see the best and worst of us as human beings, more, probably more probably more often than any of us will see the best or worst of us. How important is it to continue the conversations that look like the one we're having? How important is it to continue to keep those conversations for pushing forward?
It's essential because we must educate. We must educate our people. We have a moral duty to help people. My whole goal is to reduce suffering mentally. You know, I my why is, I know how pain feels. And if I can reduce suffering on some level for somebody else, I will do it. I was already in pain. I just decided to make it pay. And
Exactly.
so it's important to keep having these conversations, to keep breaking down these walls and these barriers, and telling people that it's absolutely okay to not be okay. Let's have the real conversations. Let's get to the root of the thing, so that your negative thought process, or your negative experience doesn't define you, and you can work toward being the best representation of yourself. Because a lot of time when you come out of trauma, we self sabotage ourselves. We think wrong. We do wrong things. We live wrong. And it's like God wants to get us good things, but we're fighting against ourselves because we don't know how. We don't
Mm,
know how to regulate those emotions.
wow. I love that. I love that. And when it comes to that, it's, you know, erasing the stigma about it, especially when it surrounds us, because there's way too much stigma when it comes to us as black and brown people. Way too much. Then there's even more stigma when it comes to men, when it comes to stuff like that. And the one thing that you mentioned that I think is so powerful with destroying that stigma is to understand that, like you mentioned earlier, it's to accept that it's okay to not be okay. And
Absolutely.
I think when we, as black and brown people, especially men, and this goes to men of any gender, any race, whatever. Men, I won't say gender. Men of any race or religious affiliation. When you break down the wall of stigma, it's easier for those who know how to reach out, and for those who know how to heal, or at least those who know how to initiate the healing process. It makes it so much easier for those people that can give that advice, that can offer those services, or better yet, help that person initiate the healing process. It makes it so much easier for advocates such as yourself. and so many other people that still engage in dealing with people at their absolute best and at their absolute worst.
Right. Agree.
And it's I know for me, that's like the one thing that I try to speak so much towards, because it's as a male, it was already hard enough for me to find an outlet to talk to somebody with all this stuff going on. You know, losing a child, losing other relatives that I loved and cared about, navigating um navigating the emotional impact and trauma of going through a divorce. So all these things are the things that compile with me. And just to hear you say and reinforce the phrase that it's okay to not be okay, that that really puts a seed, that really plants a seed of hope into me, because now that I know that it's okay to not be to okay for me to not be okay, now I can move forward and figure out what I have to do to pull the needle from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. So that way my total quality of life is much more of a positive outlook than it would be otherwise.
Absolutely.
So it's ladies like yourself and so many other people that I know, is you guys do a very difficult job. But I know when it all comes together, it's rewarding in the end. But it's but I know it's difficult from the onset though.
Yeah, it's hard to be vulnerable. Um, because the enemy wants you to he wants to attach guilt and shame to your trauma.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so but how you break through that is you tell your story anyway.
Exactly.
You tell it anyway. You tell it afraid. You tell it vulnerable. You tell it even when you don't feel like it, because you understand that you have a sound that's going to free up some people. Your sound is going to solve for some people.
Mm,
And I don't want to hold up anybody's deliverance because I keep my mouth shut.
mm. Oof. That is so powerful right there. And I'm gonna repeat it for everybody. There's a sound in you. Whatever you're doing, as whether there's a sound in you that will give somebody deliverance, that will give somebody hope, that will give somebody the willpower to to just survive another day. Man, that is so powerful. That is such a powerful thing for me to hear that right now, because it speaks to so much in my own personal life. And when you say something like that, I was like, yeah, I can my soul can resonate with that. My
Right.
heart can resonate with that. And I know that I know I can resonate with that in my mind. So when all three of those are in concert, it makes for it makes that healing process so much easier. Man,
And there's a freedom.
ooh,
There's a freedom for the obedience. See, there's a price to pay for the disobedience, but
right.
there's a freedom when you're obedient.
Wow. Wow. Man, you know what? We most definitely look. You now I see why they call. Now I see why you have that moniker, the hope dealer, because it's because you it's not the hope is not inspired. It's just not only through your actions, but it's also through your words, but it's also through your faith and your belief that anybody can come out the other side and be in good spirits and be in anything. You might smell like smoke. You might smell like smoke a little bit, but you're on the other side of it. That now I see why that moniker, the hope dealer, sticks with you, because it's not only your actions, but it's also your words, but it's you also instill faith in people, and you give them the tools, not only the emotional and the mental tools, you also give them the tools of faith. And that's so important when people are going through crisis, because they have to believe that they can come out of the other side of it. That is so powerful for me. Now I see why that name sticks with you. And that's a name that's gonna stick with you for that particular moniker is gonna stick with you for a very long time, because as you continue to deal and give out hope to people, a lot of people are gonna just, not to say that people don't speak highly of you already, because they do, but you're gonna continue to just deal out that hope, and it's gonna be something that's gonna be infectious, and everybody's gonna want to know, who is this lady that's been like who is this lady that's been giving out this hope to people, and they're coming out the other side of what they're doing. Well, I personally know her, and she is more than capable of help. She is more than capable of dealing out hope, and it's something that people have to just really just hold on to, because it's not hope is a commodity that a lot of people don't have nowadays.
Right, right. Yeah, it's hard to have hope in a hopeless world. It has to be
Exactly.
bigger than you.
Yep. Yes, indeed, indeed. And the thing that I resonate with is, faith is the substance of things that are hoped for.
Evidence and things not yet seen.
Exactly. You know,
Yes,
you don't you don't know, you can't see what's down the road for me, but God sees what's down the road for me. And if God can see what's down the road for me and can help me avoid all those pitfalls and those traps, then it's good. Then I'm good. Then I know that I'm protected.
that's right. That's right.
Man, the hope dealer. I love that. That's that's a name that's gonna stick with me for a very long time. And for as long as we remain, so for as long as we remain close associates and friends, that's a name that I'm most definitely gonna associate you with, because you truly are a hope dealer. You give of yourself to make sure that other people are able to move forward in life and be able to heal from whatever they're dealing with. For me, there was no greater there's no greater duty to be able to do that, to give oneself in service to another person. There's no greater duty, but also there's no greater reward.
Right, right.
So oh my gosh, this has been a very powerful conversation, and I do really do want to bring you back on, because I really want to touch on other subjects as it deals with mental health a lot in much more detail, because like we both agree, excuse me, these conversations have to be had, and they have to be had at for lack of a better term, they need to be had ad nauseum, because the more we as a people understand that we don't have to live in stigma, we'll be empowered with the things that we need to do to be able to push through and make it through the next day. So I really want to have you back, so we can have more we can have more- we can have more conversations about other things as it pertains to mental health, as far as like how, especially with us as a people, with men, with kids, with women. um I would really love to have you back, if you're willing to come back.
I'm ready. I'm ready to come back.
Man, look,
Ready.
I'm ready to have you too, man. I'm ready to have you. So, but before we conclude this particular interview, there's always it's two things I want you to do. The first thing is, as I always conclude with my guest, I see life as a marathon. So other people do the same. There's 3 stages in a marathon. Usually the first stage is where you come out the gate and you are beginning to pick up your pace. Second stage is that you're you're at the pace that you want and you're going at a nice clip. The third stage is that you see the finish line and you're either you see the finish line and you're pushing hard to get to that finish line and you want to finish strong. In this marathon that we call life, and looking at it from what you do as a counselor, as an author, as a philanthropist, as a speaker, and then also how from all those aspects. What stage of your marathon are you at?
Stage 2.
I got you coming out. You're already out the gate and you got that good pace going.
Yes. Stage 2.
Wow. And the way and I think that and I understand why you said that, because your work's not finished yet.
It's just begun, actually, you know.
Wow. So I love that answer, because a lot of people would look at it, well, I'm in the home stretch. No, no, sir, no, ma'am. If this is what you've been called to do, then you should be at this, either the coming out the gate stage or the second stage where you're just now picking up your pace, because there's so much work to do. The work is plenty, but there's not enough hands to do it, to complete it.
That's right.
And it's ladies like yourself and other people that are slowly but very surely beginning to make this world a better place for a lot of people, because again, excuse me, during a pandemic and through all this other stuff that we deal with, it's a lot. It's a lot emotionally, it's a lot mentally, it's a lot psychologically, and it takes a lot out of us, all of us.
Yeah,
But but
absolutely.
then but then we have good but then we have people like you, people who give of themselves and hand out hope to everybody that they see. It's people like you that make this world such a better place to be, and it makes the sun shine just a little bit brighter when people like you are around. I love it. I so love it. I love it. But I do want to give you this opportunity to just give yourself a shameless plug. Tell everybody who you are, where they can find your books at, number two, and also where they can find you at on social media. And if you have anything that's upcoming, like any events or anything like that, just let everybody know what you got going on.
Okay, well, again, my name is Sandra. I'm a hope dealer. Some people sell dope. I deal hope. I'm also a people builder. Some people build houses. I build people. So that's the other part of that. Visit my website, dealinghope.com. And the books are also available through Amazon.com as well. You can follow me on Facebook. And I also have a private group called Hope Dealer that's through Facebook as well.
Oh wow! So how often do you go live on Facebook?
Every second and fourth Monday via Facebook Live platform. Mental
Every
Health Moments on Monday.
Cool. Every second and fourth Monday. Cool. That's what's up. So make sure. So I wanna tell you guys, man, this is to have this young lady here on this platform with us tonight, and for her to share her insights and her experiences. For me personally, it means a lot, because now that for me personally, it gives me that understanding that there is another side. There is the other side from mental illness or mental health or whatever mental condition you're going through. There is an other side, and it's easily reachable. Well, I won't say easily reachable, but it's reachable. You're just gonna have to go through. You're just gonna have to endure the work. You're gonna have to go through the work to do it. And with young ladies, with women like her, and so many other people, other advocates that I know that are present, this world is so much of a better and brighter place with these people in it, because they do this. They do this, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this part of it. They do this at a great cost to themselves. And I personally want to give you your flowers now, because I actually want to give any mental health professional their flowers right now. Counselors, um, psychiatrists, psychologists, LCSWs. I want to give all y'all flowers now, because what y'all do is what y'all have is a difficult job, because you're dealing with people in the midst of a pandemic and all sorts of other madness that goes around in this world. And you guys deal with people, number one, at their absolute best, or at their absolute worst. And y'all do just like the doctors and nurses and everybody else and all the other healthcare professionals. You guys do this bravely, without nary a concern for your own well-being, and without complaint. So I really want to thank you for what you do and what you do and what you will continue to do, as far as serving out hope day in and day out. Because I know it's a difficult thing, and I know you do it much to your own detriment, but you do it without complaint, and you do it tirelessly, and you do it fearlessly. So most definitely want to give you your flowers now, while I have you in the room, while I have you in the studio, in the building with me. I really want to
Well,
give you your flowers.
thank
So
you. That means a lot.
a double bouquet of roses coming your way. Love it, love it. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends and countrymen, man, I want to introduce to some, but I want to introduce to everyone on this platform my sister, counselor, speaker, philanthropist, author, hope dealer, people builder, Miss Sandra Gamble. You guys, please most definitely check out her website, um, www.dealinghopenottdope.com. Also, check out her books. They are on Amazon, Good Grief, and also, what was the name of the second one? I'm sorry.
That's okay. To hell and back, the power of forgiveness and redemption.
Check those out. They're on Amazon. They're on Amazon.com. And also, if you're in the area there where she lives, and you personally know her, stop by and say and tell her thank you, because this is a difficult, just like the jobs of physicians and nurses and any other healthcare professionals. This is a difficult job, and oftentimes it's a thankless job. And excuse me, too often we don't thank those people that help us through difficult times enough. And I do believe it's high time that we do, because without doctors and physicians, and especially our mental health professionals, a lot of us wouldn't be in the places in the spaces that we are right now, if they weren't ever present for us. I truly believe that. And more conversations like this need to happen. Number one, to destroy the stigma of mental health, especially with Black and brown people, and especially with men. So we have to have more of these conversations. Oh, what happened? She left. So we have to have more of these conversations, y'all. We have to have more of these conversations to be able to reach more people. More conversations need to be had with church leaders. More conversations need to be had with everybody, because these conversations really need to happen. And on that note, Miss Gamble popped out, so I do apologize for that. But I do want to thank her for being a guest on the show tonight. She is she's a wonderful, wonderful guest, and I want you guys to, if you guys see her on Facebook, say hey to her and say and just and just tell her thank you for being a hope dealer. If I could leave you guys with one thing, I will leave you guys with this. The stigma of mental health is something that is very, very serious. It is very serious for people of color, such as myself, men and women, but it's also even worse for men. And there she goes.
Yes.
Hey,
Hello.
sorry about that. I don't know if it was on my end or anyone else's end. I apologize if it was on my end.
I think it was on my end. I apologize for that.
No, you're no problem. You're good. You're good. So the one thing I want you to do, and this is the one thing I want you to do, I want you to tell people, I want you to let people know, um, number one, what they can do if they're in a crisis, and number two, give our viewers some positive encouragement.
Okay. I wish I had the national number, but there's a national number for suicide or crisis prevention, and I don't have that available, and I apologize for that. But you can Google. It's a national number. It's a crisis hotline that you can speak with a clinician in confidence about what you're going through, and they can point you in the right direction. Every county has a mental health clinic normally, so you can reach out to your local mental health clinic. You could also go in to your primary care physician and just say to them, I'm just not feeling myself, and I feel as if I need to be helped. So I'm one of these people to say that we need to take a proactive approach to things instead of a reactive approach. A lot of times we react after the fact, but if you know that you're having issues with sleeping, depression, loss of interest, low libido, isolation. If you know you're not yourself, you have to advocate for yourself. No one is going to take care of you like you take care of you. And there's nobody that's going to show up for you. You have to show up for yourself. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to say is that, you know, not to make this biblical, but God gives us grace and mercy every 24 hours. And today may be a horrible day. But if you
Mhm.
could hold on 24 more hours, that might be the day that the miracle happens. I think we give up 5 minutes too soon before the miracle happens.
Mm, man, powerful, powerful advice and powerful words, y'all. So just to kind of reiterate from what Miss Gamble is saying, there's a national hotline for suicide. There's also, and I think she didn't mention it, but there's also a veterans crisis line for veterans as well. And again, talk to your doctor, talk to your primary care physician. If you're not feeling right mentally, excuse me, you can tell him or her, and they'll put you in front of resources. They'll put you in front of resources that'll be able to help you. And the second part of that is so important, y'all. Is if you we have to be able to that hold on for another day or another day or two. Though that tunnel's gonna be dark, but if you continue to drive, you continue to go down that tunnel, eventually that tunnel's gonna have light to it. And you're gonna be able to bathe and bask in that light. So don't give up on the miracle, but also don't give up on yourself, because giving up
Absolutely.
on yourself is the worst you could ever do as a human being.
And can I say something?
Sure.
You are the miracle. We are the
That's
miracle.
it. That's it.
I found the number. I found the number.
Go ahead. I'm
The
ready.
number for okay, so it's the suicide prevention or crisis hotline is 1-800-273-8255.
There we go. So so y'all heard it here. The suicide and crisis and prevention hotline. Again, that number is going to be 1-800-273-8255. And I'm actually going to post this up in our chat. Now, for veterans, I believe it's the same number, but I think they press option 1, I believe.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken. Yes, indeed, Mr. T. We are the miracle. We surely are. We surely are. And this number, this is a toll-free number, guys. So this is something you can call and you can speak to them anonymously. They'll make sure that they put you in front of resources. And but also understand that there are national and also statewide coalitions that do to say that are able to help you. And like she said, every city or county has one of these types of resources that are available to you. And the one thing that I want to amplify, and that number one, it is okay. And Miss Gamble has said this more than one time, and I have to continue to amplify the point. It's okay to not be okay. What's not okay is that you don't seek the help to better your situation or to better your outcome. That's what's not okay. And what I mean by that is suffering in silence.
That's it.
It's okay for you to say that I'm not. It's okay for you to say that I'm not okay. It's not okay to suffer in silence, because silent sufferers are the ones you will never know what they have going on or what they're going through, because they won't tell you at all. They won't tell you at all. Sandra, I want to thank you so very much for coming onto this platform and just, oh, Sandra, I think I lost her again. So Sandra, Miss Gamble, I want to thank her so very much for coming onto this platform and blessing us with her presence, blessing us with her energy, and blessing us with her enthusiasm, and also blessing us with her name, the Hope Dealer. It's something that it's a name that is truly earned. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to conclude this episode of. Oh, there she goes.
Yes, I had to plug my phone up. I'm sorry.
Up before it went kaput on you.
Yes.
All right. So,
I heard you said you
ladies,
wanted to thank you for coming on. I think you said that.
yep, I did. So, I want to thank you so very much, Miss Sandra, for coming on and blessing us with your enthusiasm, with not only with your enthusiasm, but with your ability to deal hope through faith to people who are going through so much. Um, I want to thank you for just really just being transparent and sharing and giving of your time and your energy tonight. I am very appreciative of that. I really am. So thank you very
It's,
much for that. And on
you're
that note,
welcome. It's been a pleasure.
we're gonna have more I'm most definitely gonna get in contact with you because we do have to have more conversations about this. Most definitely.
I'm ready. Just let me know when.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends, excuse me, and countrymen, that concludes this episode of Trailblazers with me, your host, Frederick Beaty. Tune in. Tune in tomorrow. Tune in tomorrow because I actually have a wonderful gentleman from Massachusetts in the building, Mr. Farrell Bacon, and we're gonna have a nice conversation. That's actually a pre-recorded conversation, but it's gonna air live. It's gonna air live tomorrow at 8 o'clock. So tune in for that. Also, you guys tune in to My Life Has Destiny podcast on this coming Thursday with Quint Jones, Coco Fenton, and they're gonna have a nice episode to talk about, and maybe have a special guest in the building. And also Friday, I come back with the Author's Alley where I have a wonderful guest by the name of Monica Duell, and we're gonna have a very wonderful conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, again, want to thank my very special guest, Miss Sandra Gamble, the Hope Dealer and the People Builder, for coming on and being so very gracious with her presence and with her time and with her energy. I truly enjoyed the conversation. There will be more conversations to come. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, 3 things that I always want to tell you guys. Number 1, take care of each other. Number 2, love on each other. Number 3, be safe out there, y'all. Please be safe out there, y'all. And on that note, I bid you good night.
Good night.